throughout history, which foreign tribes and peoples have been able to dominate Iran. Due to its unique geographical location, Iran has always acted as a crossroads for communication between different people throughout history. In ancient times, powerful governments ruled Iran and greatly prevented the invasion of primitive and invading tribes. However, in times of weakness of the central government and the great invasion of the enemies, in some periods, the Iranian rule was destroyed and the land was occupied by the aggressors. The formation of the first empire and government that covered all of present-day Iran and its surrounding areas was the Achaemenid Empire. The Achaemenid Empire, or the First Persian Empire, was able to take control of most of the important regions of the known world of that period, so that its vastness reached 3 continents and was the largest empire in the world until then and also the first superpower in the world. The Achaemenid Empire was in its greatest position and in its most powerful position during the reign of Darius the Great and then his successor Xerxes I. However, over the next 2 centuries, with the weakness of the government, Alexander the Great was finally able to defeat the Achaemenid army during a series of wars and gain their territory. This was the first time that a great Persian empire was captured and completely destroyed by a foreigner. After conquering the Achaemenids, Alexander took control of the territory and then died in Babylon only a few years after the conquest of the empire. Alexander was the main founder of the spread of Greek culture in the world and the beginning of the Hellenistic era. After Alexander's death, a war broke out between his commanders, and each of them took over some of the occupied territories. Among them, the territory of Iran came to Seleucus and he established the Greek Seleucid rule in Iran. For about 2 centuries, the Seleucids dominated Iran, until an Iranian dynasty revolted from the east and was able to take control of large parts of Iran over time. They were Parthians and were able to revive the Persian Empire. However, they could not reach the size of the lost territory of the Achaemenids again. One of the most important reasons for this was the establishment of other powerful governments such as the Roman Empire from the west. So that one of the longest wars in the history of mankind began with the Parthian and Roman Wars, in which the Romans were expanding to the east and entering the Parthian borders. However, the Parthians were able to prevent the Romans from advancing to the east, which were led to the Iranian government after them, the Sassanids, with the weakening of the Parthians, and the war with the Romans continued until the end of the Sassanid period. A 700-year war. After seizing power from the Parthians, the Sassanids were able to keep the borders of Iran, which was constantly under attack by foreigners, for the next few centuries, and even during the reign of Khosrau II, they were able to cross the borders of Iran almost as much as the Achaemenid borders, which was a short period. And because of these long wars with the western neighbor, Rome, and on the other hand, the preservation and protection of the vast borders of the empire against the invasion of nomadic tribes such as the Huns and Gok Turks in the eastern, northeastern, north and northwestern parts of Iran, also, maintaining the southern borders of the empire, from the invasion of the Arab tribes, severely weakened the government and caused a civil war, which eventually led to the domination of the new Muslim Arabs over the borders of Iran. With the advent of Islam and the unity of the Arabs, the borders of Iran were invaded, and after the Battle of Qadisiyah and then the conquest of the Iranian capital, Ctesiphon, other cities of Iran were captured one after another until the entire Sassanid Empire was dismantled and the Arabs took control of Iran. But the Arabs and the Islamic Caliphate's rule in Iran lasted for several centuries, and in the meantime, the new Iranian governments were able to take control of large parts of Iran during the Abbasid Caliphate, to the extent that the government of Bayez was able to control the Abbasid capital, Baghdad. However, due to civil wars and other factors, Iranian governments could not form a large and united central government. Post-Islamic Iranian governments were able to protect the eastern borders to some extent from the invasion of nomadic tribes, until during the Samanid period, Turkish slaves were able to form a government in the city of Ghazni, which became known as the Ghaznavids. The Ghaznavids were able to create a large territory in eastern Iran to India with Iranian culture and Persian administrative language inherited from the Samanid lords. This was the first Turkish government in eastern Iran, and after the invasion of other Turkic tribes to Transoxiana and with the capture of Bukhara and the Samanid capital and the extinction of their government, the invasion of Central Asian Turkic tribes to Iran paved the way. With the invasion of the Seljuk Turks on the borders of the Ghaznavids and after their defeat, the Seljuks were able to enter the borders of Iran, and by occupying the territory of Iranian dynasties such as Kakuyids and Buyids, they gained a large territory from Iran, Iraq and Levant. However, by employing Iranian ministers such as Nizam al-Mulk Tusi, they took the form of Iranian government, and Iranian culture overcame the invaders, and Persian remained the official and administrative language. Like other empires in history, the fate of the Seljuks led to disintegration, and local governments each took over parts until the Khwarezmians replaced the Seljuks in Iran. During the rule of the Khwarezmian, there were still clashes and differences with other Islamic governments and the Abbasid Caliphate of Baghdad until the Mongol Empire emerged from the east. The Mongols wanted to trade with the Khwarezmians, but after killing of the Mongol merchants and ambassadors, the Mongol leader, Genghis Khan, invaded the eastern borders of Iran, and the cities were captured by the Mongols one after another until the entire border of Iran was conquered by the Mongols. With the domination of the Mongols, the Ilkhanids in Iran was founded by Hulagu Khan. The Mongol rule lasted for about a century in Iran, and in the meantime, Iranian movements such as the Sarbadars were able to rise up against the Mongols and take parts. The Mongol rule also deteriorated, and the Iranian government of Muzaffarids was able to form an independent power in parts of Iran. Until another invader came from the east, Tamerlane, who considered himself a descendant of Mongol Genghis Khan, this time emerged from Central Asia and started raiding. When he reached the borders of Iran, he captured the cities one after the other and massacred people and destroyed the Iranian local governments again. And these attacks coincided with the beginning of the Renaissance and intellectual and cultural revolution in Europe. Timur's successors, by repeating the history, adopted Iranian Islamic culture and were able to partially cover Timur's brutality. The kings of the Mughal Empire of India, with Iranian culture and Persian language, were descendants of Timur. Again, the Timurid government, like the rest of the great governments, collapsed and each piece fell into the hands of one government, such as the Aqquqianlu and the Karakoyanlis. Until Shah Ismail Safavi was able to reintegrate the entire territory of Iran with a series of attacks and establish the Safavid rule in Iran. During this period, the Safavids also confronted the Uzbeks from the east and the Ottomans from the west. The Safavid rulers ruled Iran for about 2 centuries until in 1722, the Afghans revolted and conquered Isfahan and overthrew the Safavid rule. But this was considered a civil war, because at that time, modern-day Afghanistan and Afghans were part of the Safavid Persian Empire. Later, Nader Shah was able to defeat the Afghans and expand the borders of Iran again, although after his death, civil war and chaos broke out again and power was being shared between different families. Until the Qajars, led by Agha Muhammad Khan, were able to dominate the entire borders of Iran. During the Qajar period, during the Iran-Russia wars and the occupation of the borders by the Russians and the British, Iran began to lose its borders to become what it is today. In the 20th century, Iran was not safe from foreign invasion, and during the 2 world wars, Iran's territories were occupied by foreigners. But not in a way that, as in the past, the Iranian government will fall into the hands of foreigners. In World War I, Russia, Britain and the Ottomans occupied parts of Iran. However, at the end of World War I, with the Russian Revolution and the rise of the Bolsheviks and the Soviet Union, Russian forces withdrew from Iran and British influence in Iran intensified. With the coming to power of the Pahlavi dynasty and at the same time with World War II, Iran was occupied by Britain and the Soviet Union again in 1941. under the pretext of the presence of German experts in Iran and Iran's support for Nazi Germany. Iran, which had declared its neutrality at the beginning of the war, was finally forced to declare war on Germany on September 9, 1943. On the basis of this declaration of war, Iran could have joined the Declaration of the United Nations after the end of the war and also participated in post-war peace conferences. After the war, the British Army left Iran, according to the agreement with the Iranian government. However, Soviet Red Army troops remained in Iran and refused to implement the agreement, and this led to the formation of two autonomous and short-term governments of the Republic of Mahabad and the Autonomous Government of Azerbaijan, both of which were established with the support of the Soviet Union and with the aim of disintegrating Iran. In 1946, U.S. President Harry Truman threatened Stalin that if he did not order the withdrawal of Russian troops from Iran, the United States would also intervene militarily in Iran. And with the Western threats to the Soviet Union and the entry of the Iranian Imperial Army, these Soviet puppet governments in the northwest of Iran were destroyed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe my channel and follow my Instagram page, may.ald.